Welcome to The Whole View. I'm Stacy Toth of Real Everything. I'm here each week to dive deeper into how we can find happiness and health inside and out through self-love, body positivity, and discovering new ways to be our best selves. Before we get started, a reminder that this podcast is for general educational purposes and is not intended to diagnose, advise, or treat any physical or mental illness. And while Dr. Varma is a PhD, he's not your doctor. So we always recommend that you see a licensed health professional accordingly. That said, I'm excited to welcome you, Dr. Yug Varma, who has 10 years of microbiome research experience, including extensive background in bioorganic chemistry, microbiology, and synthetic biology, which rattles my brain a little bit of like bioorganic and synthetic being very different things. So I'm sure that'll come up in our conversations. But overall, with scientific training from distinguished academic institutions, say that 3 times fast, such as Johns Hopkins University and the University of California, San Francisco, Dr. Varma has now also had his work published in many prestigious journals, including Nature. And Dr. Varma's mission is to change the way that we treat chronic bacterial diseases and is working tirelessly to achieve the goal with a microbiome-based technology platform. He is passionate about promoting scientific literacy, big whoop from us and the listeners on that one, and devotes a significant amount of time to demystifying microbiome research and making the latest research accessible to the general public. He and his team discovered a probiotic that actually lives on healthy skin and specifically kills the acne-causing bacteria to balance our microbiome. And Phyla's products are built on his revolutionary breakthrough in skin microbiome research using biophages. I'm saying that correctly, right? It's phages.
Bacteriophages.
Phages. Okay. And you are the co-founder of that brand and CEO of Phyla, a probiotic skincare system to target acne. And for all of our listeners who aren't toning their skin or who are wondering how to help teenagers, or perhaps you have your own perimenopausal hormonal skin, something I'm quite familiar with, we're going to get into all of that today. So welcome so much to The Whole View, Dr. Varma.
Hey, Stacy, thanks for having me. It's great to be on.
So maybe you could tell us a little bit about yourself. What got you into like geeking out on the little pets in our guts?
Oh my goodness. I've been geeking out on this I was counting the years, about 19 years now, and I've been following this technology for that long. When I first heard about it, my immediate thought was, why isn't this technology more widespread? Why don't people know about it? Why isn't it being adopted in biotech drug development or available in doctors' offices? And I got some of those answers along the way, but all throughout, I've been really fascinated with this technology. And my passion has been to take this technology, build products with it, make them available to people so people can buy it, it can touch their lives. And then hopefully we can march on to another indication, something like eczema or rosacea, and build a very compelling product that has really great advantages compared to what we're using for those diseases nowadays. So that's really been the kind of fuel for me to go on.
I think more than just the products that we can use, there's also a lot to understand about our microbiome and the habits that we have, or the foods that we eat, or different kinds of things like that play a role. So maybe for those unfamiliar, you can start by giving us an overview of microbiome in general. What does it mean even when we use that term?
Yeah, I think that's a great starting point. The way I think about it, we have a rainforest residing inside of our body, and most of the time we're not even aware of it. And that's easy to do because the trees of this rainforest are bacteria, viruses, and fungi, right? And these organisms all build a community together, living not just off of our body, but with our body and within our body, right? So what does that mean? A lot of your listeners are probably aware of the gut microbiome, right? The microbiota, or the microorganisms that live in our gut that are fed by what we eat every day, and consequently play a huge role in our health and maybe our dysbiotic or disease states. Everything from allergies, asthma, and now even neurological disorders and autism are now being intimately connected to the microbiome. And it's been shown that through multiple pathways, there are all of these ways in which the microbiome kind of talks to us, our immune system, and kind of calibrates it to a state that keeps us healthy. And in some cases, it makes us sick, right? Now, just like a rainforest, so this rainforest is this community of microbes is called the microbiome. And just like you can have different types of rainforests, right? The trees that grow in the Amazon rainforest are different than the trees that grow in Java and Sumatra. And they're the trees that grow in, they're different from the trees that grow in whatever, Costa Rica or Puerto Rico. So there are different habitats in these forests. The gut microbiome is one. There's a skin microbiome as well, which is what my company works on. And there's even an oral microbiome. There's a vaginal microbiome. So pretty much most of the surfaces in our body, inside and out, are covered in bacteria. Now, just like a rainforest, when you're healthy, your microbiome looks different, right? So your microbiome looks different from my microbiome. But when we're both healthy, our microbiomes share a trait that they're in balance. The bacteria are living in harmony. They're sending signals. I call them happy signals to the body, and everything's fine. Everything's in balance. When you get a chronic disorder that's driven by bacteria, right? In the gut, we're familiar with that. It can be tummy problems. It can be IBD, IBS, Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis. There are many flavors of this. And on the skin, we have disorders as well, like acne and eczema and so on. So when you have these kinds of chronic disorders, what's happening is one bacteria usually grows out of proportion, and it causes an imbalance that your body senses, and it throws out inflammation to try and redress that balance. So you've gone from a healthy, balanced state to now a dysbiotic state. And so intuitively, we should say, hey, in order to get back to health, we should just bring our microbiome back in balance. That will cut off the source of this inflammation, and everything will go back to normal. And that's exactly what my technology does, and what I've been striving to do for the better part of a decade with this technology, because it's really powerful. And by getting to the root cause of the issue that we're addressing, we're able to just solve it in a much more elegant way, but a way that's free of side effects and relapses.
I want to be really clear with listeners because what you're talking about is backed by science. We can look at endless studies. In fact, just a quick Google search brought up an article yesterday that was published in Nature with looking at microbiota markers for the autism spectrum.
Mhm.
And at the same time, as someone who is the mother of someone with autism, I'm very sensitive to the idea that there is something to fix, right? Like my son is not something to fix. And when we are aware that certain bodies can be affected in certain sort of ways, like if we have a neurological disorder or if we have some of these other conditions, it's not that taking a probiotic of some kind is going to magically fix us. It means that maybe we're predisposed to our microbiome becoming out of balance or some of those things. But I'm wondering if maybe you can just touch on that a little bit, because I don't want to give the impression, and I don't think that you were, but I want to be abundantly clear that there's the difference between linking things within our body to optimize our health and a difference of trying to claim that something is going to magically fix someone or make them better when they don't really need to be better. They are. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
you are who you are, no matter how you're born. Like whether you have Crohn's disease, that doesn't mean that you're not a great person or whatever it might be.
Totally. Yeah. And I'm glad you brought that up, because, again, it would be a mistake for me to claim and for your listeners to take this home that, oh, the microbiome, fixing the microbiome will completely fix problems A, B, C, D, whatever it may be. In some cases, the microbiome we know has a role to play. We don't know how much, but it's a part of the puzzle, right? It's a piece that fits into the puzzle. And if you can solve that piece, then you can bring some amount of relief or amelioration of symptoms or whatever. In some cases, it is either the central or close to one of the central kind of factors driving a disease. And when we started off with this technology, we really wanted to find a disease where the microbiome was a central factor, and that we knew a lot about it, and that we knew like it was really well understood and well studied. There really wasn't a mystery or a controversy or like, oh, is it this or that? Will the doctor have to figure it out? And that's important for a frontier technology because obviously you want the stars to align and have kind of the best case forward. But going back to the case of autism and even like things like Alzheimer's, there's a microbiome component that's known. That is not to say that tomorrow if I started chewing a probiotic pill or eating tons of yogurt or whatever, right? Buying huge amounts of probiotics on the internet that it fixed my problem. It's still an area of ongoing research. There's been some really interesting work that's been done and some really cool clues that have been that we know about right now. But obviously a lot of work is done. And at the end of it, I suspect we will know that, especially when it comes to autism, but also a lot of these like gut disorders that are very complex, that the microbiome is a piece of the puzzle. It's not the whole thing.
That makes a lot of sense to me. And I think also to consider that the microbiome is not just in one area, right? You mentioned there's oral microbiome, all of these different biomes. Do you consider them separate rainforests? Are they all part of the same rainforest, right? Like, can you have, for example, healthy oral microbiome, but then have dysbiosis in your gut, or are they all linked together?
They are linked to a certain extent in the sense that, yes, your oral microbiome, every time you swallow, you're sending a bit of that oral microbiome right down the chute to your gut, right? And there are some species that are generalist species, right, that can live in different habitats. Because if you consider the gut, which is this very dark, anaerobic kind of, it's getting a considerable amount of nutrients, but the nutrients have been pre-digested by our body and absorbed. And so whatever they get is what we call indigestible, right? Indigestible fiber. Well, we can digest it, but it's actually food for our bacteria, which is why it's really important to eat fiber. It's the fiber can't be utilized by us as calories, but it's calories for the bacteria, right? But when you come to the skin, it's exposed to the elements. There's a lot of temperature fluctuations. It's exposed to the sun and the heat and the cold and the wind and wetness and dryness. It's a lot of flux. There's almost no nutrients on our skin because our skin is very acidic. It's very dry. And so it's almost in a way, a desert environment. And so as a result, probiotics and even prebiotics for your gut are totally different from what's on your skin because they live on different things. It's like trying to take some seaweed and plant it in the desert and say, you're a plant. I've planted you in soil. Why aren't you growing? Well, seaweed grows under water and cacti grow in the desert. Can mix the two.
That's a great analogy. I think the idea of skin being a desert and being very acidic is something I'd like to talk a little more about because I have a lot of clients who I work with on skincare. I myself am very well versed. I love to research all about it. And I'm always shocked to discover that there are so many people who are skipping the toning step of their skincare routine. So, what I mean by that is it is recommended to have a 4-step skincare routine that starts with washing your skin, prepping your skin, and then treating and protecting your skin. And there are so many people who are focused on the serums, the treatment part, that they're skipping that prep step to whether it's an essence or a toner or whatever it is to balance the pH and to get the skin back to an optimal place. And so, not to lead the witness here, although obviously I am, I'm wondering if you could maybe explain why that is making the products that they are using less effective and what that's doing to their microbiome.
Yeah, I can certainly speak to the kind of pH and the environment on the skin and the importance of maintaining that, right? So if you think about it, our skin, which is our largest organ, has the largest surface area of any organ. It's also our heaviest organ, is the main kind of interface between us and the world, right? We're touching things, we're sensing things with our fingers and our whole body, and the skin is involved with that. And as a result, as you can imagine, our skin comes in contact with a number of microorganisms all the time. Now, if we didn't have the defenses that our skin has, then that would mean that we pick up all sorts of bacteria and they would start growing on us. And in very short order, we'd be a complete mess, right? So it's really fascinating how the skin has evolved or adapted its defenses and that it functions as remarkably, homeostatic as it does, which means it maintains a certain balance and just stays there. And one of the crucial parts of that is the pH. The skin is very acidic, and that acidity makes it very inhospitable for most bacteria that are just landing on it to survive. Obviously, the bacteria that are in our skin microbiome are adapted to that acidic situation. And so it's really important to maintain the pH of your skin. I think a lot of products and brands right now have realized that and make sure to adjust their pH to be like acidic and in line with the skin. But yeah, there are a lot of them that are like alkaline or highly basic, and applying them or over a long period of time on your skin can cause damage.
I guess it would be helpful to know what that mechanism is, right? And I'll tell you what I think it is, and you tell me, geek out a little more than maybe what I'll say and I know, right? But there are a bunch of layers within our skin. There's not just your skin. There are many layers, and there is something called a moisture barrier,
Mhm.
which is, if you're using the desert analogy, that if you go deeper into the sand, that there is a place where the soil is going to be more moist down underneath. And that is going to protect against things, hopefully, like I think about it like my lawn, right? If my lawn is taken care of regularly, if we have rain, if we have regular foot traffic on the grass or whatever, it has homeostasis. But if there's a drought, you're going to start seeing huge cracks in the ground where it's pulling apart. Or if people are playing football on my grass, there's going to be divots and chunks of it taken out, and that's going to create problem areas in the grass. And so if we don't maintain that mantle, that moisture barrier area of our skin, then it is allowing the bacteria and the things that might get through, as you were talking about, into those deeper layers of our skin, which can cause, inflammation of a multi different sort. It could be blemishes and acne, but it could also be rosacea, psoriasis, and different sort of things are all dry skin conditions. And so when I'm
Mhm.
talking to people, it seems always like it's a shock to them that if they have blemish prone skin, that I might recommend to them to use an oil or something, right? That or more moisture. And they're thinking to themselves, well, no, my skin is already slick. But I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about the science of how all of that is working to also not just like that little friends, the microbiome that are on the topical part of our skin, but that also live within our body to protect us from the bacteria that do get in if we have an injury or a cut or something like that, or if our skin is damaged because we have these dry skin conditions or other type of skin conditions. It is letting that bacteria in, and the microbiome can't do their job if they're not living in an environment that is helping them prosper, so to speak, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's like I said, it's all about maintaining a balanced microbiome, right? Because then your microbiome's happy, your skin's happy, and your health is great. So the pH of the skin is often also called the acid mantle of the skin, and it's maintained by a number of processes that are on our skin. And so the topmost layer of our skin is made up of pretty much dead skin cells, right? And that are pushing up from the dermis. And based on a number of cellular processes, our skin cells make sure that top layer is acidic and dry. One of the main reasons is that it wants to seal in the moisture on the lower layers of the skin cells, which are epithelial cells, right? So they don't have their own kind of moisture protection. They can dry out very easily. And so one of the ways in which our skin does this is it produces oil, right? In our face, that's called the sebum. And we actually have the largest collection of sebum glands, sebaceous glands, is on our face, on our upper chest, and our upper back, right? And this will give you a clue of where you get acne, because you get acne in those places. You never get acne on your knee or your elbow or your lower shin. So that's a clue of what's going on with your skin. Now, the sebum is full of lipids or fats, right? It's this waxy substance. Um, and like a waxy substance, it helps seal in the moisture. So sebum has a really important role to play. It prevents water loss. It prevents you from getting premature aging, fine lines, and wrinkles because it really maintains the hydration of your skin in a very important way. And so it's important to keep the sebum around, but unfortunately, some bacteria living in this very nutrient poor area of our skin have figured out a way to use the lipids as a carbon source. So they use sebum as their food and they live off of it. And no bacterium on our skin does that better than a bacterium called Cutibacterium acnes. It does it so well, in fact, that on everyone's face, there's at least 50% of all bacteria on your face are this one bacterium, Cutibacterium acnes. And often, like the median prevalence of it is about 70 to 90%. So 7 to 9 bacteria out of every 10 bacteria on your skin are likely to be Cutibacterium acnes. Now, this bacteria causes acne as well, but it's on everyone's face, right? So what gives? Why isn't everyone afflicted with acne? The answer is that it's not just the presence of this bacteria, but remember, it's the balance of the microbiome. So our microbiome and our skin are well suited to have high amounts of C. acnes, but up to a point. If the C. acnes overgrows beyond that point, then we get acne. And of course, this depends on many factors, right? This depends on how hospitable your skin is to C. acnes, what kind of food it's getting, what other processes are leading to balance in the microbiome or an imbalance. But fundamentally, it's really the overgrowth of this one bacterium that drives acne.
It's super fascinating. And it explains to me why under caring for your skin would have this negative effect because your body's going to overproduce the oil and the sebum in order to lock that moisture in so that it's
Hmm.
not losing it. But then on the same aspect, why over caring for your skin, there is this trend on Skin Talk. I recently saw a video where someone was sharing how after becoming obsessed with Skin Talk, her skin went from beautiful and smooth and all these things to being a nightmare. Her before and after was that she had done too much to her skin, essentially taking away all the good bacteria and all of the protective type mechanisms that were on her skin with assuming too many acids, too many exfoliants, too many all these things to then disrupt that microbiome, disrupt the skin's ability to protect itself, the acid mantle, the moisture barrier, all these things, so that then now she is struggling with painful looking breakouts. Where do we as individuals draw a line for ourselves in terms of what's helpful versus harmful? Like, we need to do stuff, but we need to make sure that it's not too much, right?
Yeah, and there was a study done a few years ago that showed that the average woman puts on 500 ingredients of skincare every day. Now, that's a lot, right? And you can imagine the burden your skin is under. It's having to deal with all of these products. A lot of these ingredients won't wash away, so it's going to sit on your skin all day until you hopefully wash it off at night. But then you're going to put on some more ingredients. And so I'm going to go out on a limb and say that all 500 ingredient of those ingredients are not probably not essential for your skin. You could probably do with a few less. And that really is kind of part of the minimalist ethos for our company, where we aren't interested in providing or selling a bajillion products and a range of 50 SKUs because other people are doing that already. We want to lead with science. We want to help people understand what's going on in their skin and only do what is relevant and what's important. The rest of it can stay away. And so, yeah, obviously that's not for everyone, but I remember about 10 years ago, there was this fad of having these really complicated skincare techniques, like the Korean skincare 15-step regimen, 10-step regimen. And I thought, who has time for that? Even if you could afford it and you have the space in your bathroom for all that, it's a lot of time that you're spending layering this and that. And of course, that's not to say people Some people have more sensitive skin than others. Even for sensitive skin, I would argue that less products are probably better. But your account of that person who got obsessed with skin talk is just it I think it resonates with a lot of people because that's often what happens. Your skin knows to be healthy. You've just sometimes got to help it along a little bit or give it a nudge in the right direction, but you don't need to drown it in 500 ingredients every day.
I think it's funny because you said, "Who has time for that?" And I'm, like, raising my hand. I'm like, "Me, I'm the person." I love to skin cycle because I don't put everything on the same day. I have very sensitive skin, and when I was younger, I had incredibly blemish-prone skin, and I've learned that less is more with my skin. So, I do a vitamin C one day, I'll do, a hydration treatment the next day. I cannot, like, flood my skin every single day with all of the things, and I think it's a little bit different too from a cultural perspective to be a male scientist versus, like, a mom of teenagers in terms of cultural expectations of aging or different sort of things, and I think the more we can be aware of them and also say to yourself, what is your personal goal with your skin? If your personal goal is to simply get blemish free and feel confident in your skin, that's a much different routine than someone that's like, I am starting to see signs of aging and I'm trying to slow down that process in a more natural way versus someone who's like going to the dermatologist and like, I am ready for the big treatments of whatever, right? Like those are three very different approaches depending on what someone's goals are. And I think for me, part of the problem is with social media, you lose sight of what your own goals are or what your own ideals of what you want are driven from. And you are instead feeling comparison syndrome, right? Where
Mhm.
you're looking at someone else and you're making choices for or because of someone else. And one of the things that I'm really big on is like, I personally want to feel good in the skin that I'm in. I don't care what anybody else is thinking about or judging me or anything like that. And if I feel my skin and I feel my pores because they have grime in them, right? I am a more oily prone skin person. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to do an exfoliation because I can feel it. And I know that makes me more prone to blemishes, even as a woman in my 40s. But I think that there are some people who don't have time and that I talk to that are like, I just want to like wash my face at the end of the day and climb into bed and not do the David Rose 9-step skin
Mhm.
routine. Like, okay, there are options for you as well, right? Like everybody can find the thing that works for them. But I think part of what I appreciate about the solution that you're offering is that there does not need to be an abundance of 47 things that you need to do in order to get homeostasis on your skin. And one of the things that I think would be important to touch on, as you said, hopefully wash your face at the end of the day. That's another thing that I really try to drive home with people is that this isn't just about what you think you've done to your skin that day. And you're like, oh, it's fine. I'm gonna climb into bed. We are exposed to more things than we can see or are aware of in terms of the bacteria on your skin that you're talking about. We're talking about pollution in the air that we breathe, that our skin is touching. You might have come into contact with someone who has a virus who's getting sick, and washing your face is like washing your hands. It's important to do it before you climb into bed and literally rub your face into a surface. And most of us are not changing our pillowcases every day. Most people are changing them hopefully once a week, twice a week. For those people who, like my teenagers, if it was up to them, they would like never change their pillowcase and then they would complain about their skincare problems. I'm like, well, so I think that it's important to understand why you mentioned washing your face at the end of the day is so important, because it's not just about like the sebum that your skin is producing. It's also about all of the things that your skin has come into contact with that day. That is the time at which our cells rejuvenate, that we're resting while we're sleeping, cellular repair, all of the things. And it can't do that if it's like smothered with grime and gunk in a positive sort of way.
Yeah, I totally agree. I have nothing to add because that was actually just very deep and perfect, and I covered everything.
Well, it's not often I hear that, but thank you very much. Okay. So I actually had a prior podcast co-host, Dr. Sarah Ballantyne. I don't know if you're aware of her, but she wrote a gut microbiome book that completely changed her perspective on the education that she'd been sharing for a decade. And we've talked about it here on the show before, but essentially she went from promoting restriction diets to now being very focused on diversity and helping people understand how important that is and making it accessible for a broad scope of people because of the work that she did in researching the microbiome and realizing the impact that our specifically gut health has, but overall, as we've discussed, microbiome is not a one single facet in our body and our system. But I'd love if you could talk a little bit about your experience with the research and science on this concept of how important diversity is for our gut health as it relates to the different nutrients or foods that we're eating.
Yeah, we work primarily with skin health, but I can talk about gut health because I did 6 years of research on gut health. When I was at UCSF, working with the gut microbiome and trying to uncover pathways by which the gut bacteria talk to our immune system, and obviously that has a lot of knock-on effects. So diversity is really important because it's one of kind of the signals of a healthy microbiome. Now, there are some caveats. There's the vaginal microbiome where a lack of diversity is a positive thing. When it gets too diverse, that's a sign of dysbiosis. But its normal state is a low diversity with the right fauna present, obviously. It's really important to promote diversity because just like with a rainforest, right, the more diverse you have it, the more healthy it is and the more interconnected that web of life is. And what we've seen is that as we get sick, one of the things we lose is diversity. Also, by the way, when our skin gets older, we lose bacterial diversity. And so the really interesting thing is, hey, can we push diversity up in our skin, and could that help us with aging and make our skin look better as we get older? Um, a lot of these problems, these dysbioses, whether it's bacterial overgrowth causing the dysbiosis, you'll see a lack of diversity as well. And that's understandable because one bacteria is taking over, right, and squeezing out. And in the gut, we see this in many ways, including with C. diff infections, but also with other ulcerative colitis and IBD and so on. Acne kind of has the same thing where you see an overgrowth of one bacteria, C. acnes, and that drowns out the diversity that's there. And it is what we call suppressed diversity. So it's not like the diversity is gone, it's just that it's muted. And so when you relieve the burden, when you beat back the kind of overgrowth, right, this diversity will bloom up again. And actually, we ran a clinical trial with our technology where we applied phages on the skin of people with acne. And in just 8 weeks, we're able to see a huge bloom of diversity on their skin, which actually correlated with them getting better. So, in other words, the increase in diversity of the responders in our trial was greater than the overall cohort. So, all of these, this is like for us, this was a piece of evidence that diversity is really important in acne. And just to showcase what diversity can do, around the world, the prevalence of acne is about 85%. 85% of us get acne at some point in our lives. This number is remarkably solid. It's 85% in America, in South America, in Asia, in Africa, in Europe, in Australia, all over the place. Except there are a few human populations on Earth where acne is either completely absent or is incredibly rare. So teenagers aren't pimply, adult acne is not a thing, it doesn't exist. One such population is the Yanomami people, a very remote tribe in the Amazon, pre-human contact. So they still live in the way that they've lived for probably tens of thousands of years. And they do not have any acne. Um, Kids don't get it, adults don't have it. They're like, what are you talking about? This is not a thing. The difference between their microbiome and our microbiome is that their skin microbiome diversity is off the charts compared to ours. And it's really interesting because can you imagine living in a world with no acne? For a lot of people who suffer from acne, they're like, that's not even a dream. I couldn't even dare to dream that. But
And they're
it's
not using the David Rose 9-step skincare routine either.
clearly, yeah, that's the one thing they're missing. But yeah, it's just a fascinating glimpse into what we could be, and that we don't have to live and accept what our society tells us is normal. And part of that, honestly, is to bring some of the scientific research and the breakthroughs and the insights that we're getting from basic science and bring it to the market, put it in a bottle, have people try it, give them access to it. And so for me, my journey has really been a lot about providing access, creating an opportunity for science to really touch people's lives. And that's what drives me in my company.
I think it's also interesting to consider the ways in which those individuals living in the Amazon would have access to diversity of the different kinds of bacteria and the microbiome in it, right? Like I think about how the dirt in and of itself has prebiotics and other has its own microbiome, right? Like everywhere. And we wash with soap everything in modern day society, getting rid of some of those things that from an evolutionary standpoint, we had flourishing in our lives and were creating perhaps more of a balance than we have today. And I think it's hard in modern day society to know, okay, well, I also have exposure to pandemic level virus. I need to wash my hands, but I also know that like some of the healthy bacteria is then being washed away. It's like this hard balance that we're all trying to strike. And so finding a tool, whether it's the skincare that you're passionate about that has the prebiotic in it that is helpful, or whether it's, adding more fermented foods to your life to get more
Mhm.
diversity of probiotics from that perspective, right? Like there's all these different things that we can do, but I think it's important to be mindful. I know as a mom, when my kids were little and they would come in and they would be dirty, I had to restrict myself from insisting that they go get cleaned up right away all the time, right? Because I had to remind myself, I'm like, this is their instinct to do this thing, and it's working for them. It's like they're dirty, it's grossing me out, but also like my kids did not get sick a lot, and I wouldn't say that's because they played in the dirt and didn't wash their hands, but it was important for me to have that mindset as a mother watching my young children, and I'm trying now to adapt and have that mindset because my children are now teenagers, they're driving cars. 2 of my children work in a kitchen, and so they're around a lot of grease and steam and kind of things that aren't doing great wonders for their skin, and so it's this constant thinking about what exposures we have and what kind of friends on our skin or in our gut or in our mouth, wherever, who we're like giving that prop to become more flourished versus
Mhm.
is there a balance for diversity? And I think that's where my question about the gut microbiome comes from, because that's my understanding. It's not just our immune system, it's also our skin that's affected by our gut microbiome. Like our gut microbiome has a lot of impact to everything that's happening in our body. And so if we are restricting and avoiding a lot of the fruits and vegetables and different kinds of things that have the fiber that you were talking about that really help our little friends in our gut, but also for a really long time I didn't eat legumes or beans or grains, and then I would need to take so many supplements to increase my probiotics and to have that kind of diversity that I was always struggling with my digestive health and all of these things. And now I'm like, why was that? You know what I mean? Like, why was I doing that? For what purpose? So I wanted to just bring that awareness to people from the perspective of it's doing more than just what you think that it's doing for this one thing. Like you might be thinking, oh, I'm going to restrict because I'm targeting this one area of my life or my body, but there's a lot more to it than that. Like our body we can't pick and choose how it's affecting us. It's going to affect everything in our bodies.
Yeah, absolutely. And the gut is a big nexus of the immune system. And so when your gut's not happy, a lot of things can go wrong. There's a lot of inflammation and it can reach different organs in our body. We know that. So, yeah, it's really important to have a balanced diet. I love Michael Pollan's very pithy prescription for it. I think he says, eat whole foods, mostly plants, not too much. It's great. Covers pretty much every base. And yeah, everything I think in moderation, not too much, and you can enjoy yourself, but you can also be healthy at the same time.
So I'm wondering if listeners are thinking to themselves, okay, I have this particular issue, or my teenager has this particular issue. What is something positive and actionable that they can take to be of service and work on either themselves or someone else without worrying about all of the things, right? Because we're talking about all of these different microbiome and all of the different things that affect them. And sometimes it feels like, what can I even do? Um,
hmm
I'm wondering what you would recommend.
Well, I think that we work mostly on this, we work on the skin, but I know that a lot of the work that you do is with the gut and the whole body. I would say make small incremental changes in the right direction, but build them into habits. In other words, it's less it's less impactful if you fast for a week and are unable to do that again because it was such a horrible experience. But if you can say, "Oh, I'm going to drink more water every week and or every day." Buy a bottle and you say, "Hey, I'm going to finish that bottle every day." All right? Knock that out for a few weeks, for a few months, feel good. Okay. All right, I want to eat more fiber in my diet, right? Or I want to incorporate more plants in my diet. So I'm going to cut out like meat for 1 day a week or 2 days a week. Can you do that for a long period of time? If not, then you're going to be switching back and forth, yo-yoing here and there. You're not going to get consistent results. And ultimately, your body's not going to be happy because it'll just keep switching up. And along with that advice comes the other piece, which is be patient, right? It takes many years for us to get sick. It can take many years for us to get better. And so whatever it is, if you have healthy habits, trust in those, and they will reap rewards. They will pay the dividends. Maybe not tomorrow or next week, but what you'll be doing, and even if you don't see the actual results, if you have good habits, your body will be healthier. Exercise, I think, is another big thing of just getting enough exercise and honestly, just getting outdoors. Even if you're not sweating and doing high intensity workouts or whatever, even if you're just taking a walk for 40 minutes a day, it the effect that it'll have not just on your health but on your mental health and your outlook is going to be huge. You're going to feel happier, more content, more durable, more able to withstand all the stuff that life throws at us. And it's a very simple thing. It's accessible to everyone. You don't have to be rich, or I guess you do need to. It helps if you're near a park or someplace nice, but you can always be outdoors and walking around.
I think it's funny. I started chuckling a little bit because you started with like, just do one thing, drink more water. And then it was like, and this, which is what I don't want people to feel like they have to do. So, what I'm going to encourage listeners to do is you gave a lot of different ideas. Choose just one thing
hmm
and implement that into your life and feel really good about it. And as you start to feel good, maybe you'll want to do more things. But just, I agreed with your first approach, which was like, if you try to do too much too fast, you're not setting yourself up for success, which is not going to be something that you can do long term. So for me, that was starting with a smoothie every morning. It allowed me to quit coffee, which allowed my circadian rhythm to get in check, which allowed me to have better sleep, right? Like it was this snowball of amazingness in my life. And I just had
hmm
to make like one choice to implement that. And so choose what that one thing is for you. It might be going for a 10-minute walk in the sunshine a day, and then you're going to feel like, oh, I need water. Oh, I need these other things, maybe. But if you tell yourself you have to do all of those things, it becomes overwhelming. So just, I love your idea of one thing. And I'll take it one step further, which is, what is one thing that you would recommend someone do for their skin? Because I know that's your area of expertise.
Yeah, I would say I'll give you a couple. One is drink water. Staying hydrated is really important for your skin. And the other one, which is a don't, is don't dry out your skin. Because we discussed that the acne bacteria feed on our sebum and the oils in our skin. It's very easy to say, oh, if the oil is the food, then, let's cut off the food. But as we've discussed, the oil has many beneficial roles to play. It prevents water loss, it seals in the moisture, it helps your skin cells stay hydrated and plump. And consequently, it prevents things like aging, fine lines, and wrinkles. And so the short-term consequences aren't evident when you start drying out your skin. But I guarantee you, in the long term, in 10 years or so, you'll look around and you'll say, wow, my skin looks a lot worse than other people my age. And by that point, the damage has been done. So it's really important to not dry out your skin.
I'm a big fan of that. I like the glazed donut effect when I go to bed. I want to be like
Yeah,
as plump, as hydrated, as all the things as I possibly can. Um,
perfect.
well, Dr. Yug Varma, thank you so much for being on the show. Can you remind people about yourself, your company, all the things where they can find you?
Yes. So we are Phyla, Phyla. You can find out more about us and our products at phylabiotics.com. There we have a lot of the science behind our technology, our phage technology, as well as our clinical results. And we hope to demystify a lot of acne. I do a lot of these podcasts and I'm available whenever our customers call in and say, hey, I had a question about this product, or I thought acne was caused by this, or can I take this as well? So help answer all of those questions. We are on socials as well at Phylabiotics everywhere and on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, etc. And yeah, we have good content. So hopefully we give you enough to make a good decision for yourself and for your acne and for your skin. And really our outlook is to not solve acne for next week or next month, but for the long term. And we're invested in people's long-term skin health.
And I just want to say, normally I do not have people on who have brands or products that are competitive to something that I'm also doing, but I love what you're doing so much. You're also focused on the kinds of things that I think are really important when you're talking about things that you're putting on top of your skin. We don't absorb everything that our goes onto our skin, but as we've talked about, it does penetrate through to lower layers of our skin and can be absorbed into our bodies in different sort of ways. And your line is fragrance free, it's allergen free for a lot of the folks who have gluten or other allergies. I myself am celiac, so I avoid skincare with gluten. And then also free of things like parabens and phthalates and petroleums, other carcinogens that people are looking for in quality skincare. So I partner with brands that represent to me something that I would feel good about myself or my family purchasing. And so part of the reason that I was like, yes, I would like to have this conversation. I'm okay to talk about your brand is because I think that I would totally let my children use your products and hoping that it would help with their acne if they weren't using other products that I give them myself. But I appreciate the work that you're doing on that front. And I think that a lot of people could benefit from getting off of skin talk and into understanding some of the reasons that our skin is doing what it's doing. I think oftentimes, oh my goodness, like I can't even with the little tweens who want everything from Sephora. And I'm like, you do not need retinol.
Wow.
Teenager. Yeah, it's intense. So appreciate what you're doing and your time on the show. Listeners, if you've enjoyed this conversation, if you could leave a review saying so, it would mean so much and help us continue to do this work at no cost to you. Costs you nothing but a few seconds of your time and makes a huge difference in our ability to do the work. And don't forget to follow or subscribe in whatever podcast app you're using. As always, we appreciate your willingness to be open to grow through your own personal changes. No one is perfect, but in listening, learning, and unlearning, you can choose to become a better version of yourself for ourselves. Thank you so much, Dr. Varma. Was there anything else that you wanted to mention that we didn't cover?
No, I really enjoyed my time on your podcast, Stacy. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here.